So my topic this morning is supporting one another. It's a common human bond that everyone wants to be heard and everyone wants to be understood. The trouble comes when our desire to be heard and understood overrides our ability to hear or understand. This is especially true when faced with a stressful situation, such as being diagnosed with an incurable illness like myasthenia gravis. And it's not only you, the patient, that's affected by this diagnosis, but everyone in your social circle. You, your significant other, your parents, siblings, children, other family members, friends, coworkers, and even casual acquaintances may be affected by your diagnosis. And everyone will have a reaction to the news of MG, and everyone will have an opinion about your MG diagnosis. Some, in trying to understand how this could happen to you, will search relentlessly for answers to understand the cause of your MG. Perhaps even to the point of blaming you for doing something to cause it. Others will act as if nothing happened and will go about their lives expecting you to do the same, even when it's apparent that you can't. Some people will get very angry at you for no reason at all because you've changed in ways that they didn't plan. Others will don their superhero capes, like my husband, bend over backwards to help you with every unspoken need. And you, how will you react? When faced with your diagnosis, it's normal to feel grief. Grief for a life that could have been, grief for dreams that lost. Perhaps you're familiar with the 5 stages of grief, recognized and outlined by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross back in 1967. Well, in 2001, a critical care nurse thought it should be expanded. Her name was Jay Wright. She was a registered nurse. She updated and expanded the original 5 stages to 7. The first one, shock and denial. It's a numb disbelief occurs at the devastation of a loss. It could be any kind of loss, and MG is a type of loss, the MG diagnosis. Shock provides protection from being overwhelmed all at once. This could last for weeks. The second, pain and guilt. The shock wears off, it's replaced with suffering and excruciating pain. It's important to experience this fully and not numb it artificially. The third is anger and bargaining. Frustration leads to anger, and uncontrolled, it can permanently damage relationships. Many try to negotiate with oneself or a higher power in an attempt to change your loss. Next could come depression, reflection, and loneliness. A long period of sad reflection sometimes overtakes a person as the magnitude of the loss sets in. Then there's the upward turn. Life becomes calmer, more organized as one starts to adjust to life with the loss that's occurred, or with your illness. Then there's reconstruction and working through. As a person starts to become more functional, realistic solutions seem possible for a life after the MG diagnosis. And the last stage is acceptance and hope. A person learns to accept and deal with the reality of their situation, and they're more future-oriented and learns to cope. Now, it may take you years to work through these stages. You may work them all at once, but they're not linear. Sometimes you can bounce around from one to the other. It's not always a linear drive of going from denial all the way through to hope. Everyone experiences these stages of grief at their own pace and in their own way. And by everyone, I mean everyone, including your social circle. The reason I bring this up at all in a session about supporting one another is that it's important to know which stage you are in and which stage your social circle is in. I call these stages filters. There's the 7 stages of grief. This is also in your booklet. If you are looking through the world with angry eyes, you may find blame everywhere or blame anyone for the pain you are feeling. This will certainly affect your communication. And here's my angry filter. Or if you're an established MG patient seeing the world through acceptance and hope filter, and you meet a new friend, they may be in the denial stage because they just having just heard of your illness, they may react in a very unhelpful way. But you look so good. Are you sure you're sick? So how do we communicate effectively and support one another within our social circle? First, by listening as well as expecting to be heard. Second, by recognizing that everyone is dealing with the MG diagnosis in their own way and at their own pace. One way to ensure that we are listening as well as being heard is to practice reflective listening skills. We all have the tendency to think about how we are going to answer or what we are going to say even before it's our turn to talk, instead of fully listening to the person that's currently speaking. Instead of doing that, try reflecting back to the person what you think they have just said, and allow them to expand on their idea or clarify their thoughts so that you thoroughly understand the message. For instance, you, the MG patient, might say, "I'm feeling unusually weak today. I may need help making dinner." But your significant other hears, through an anger filter because he just got home from a long day's work, "She did too much today again. Now I have to pick up the slack and make dinner." In reality, she may only want help peeling the potatoes or have you bring up a chair to the stove top so that she can sit down while she's cooking. A better reaction for the significant other might be reflective listening. "You feel weaker? What can I do?" And listen as she explains exactly what is needed. Or you, as a very tired parent or caretaker, need to take some time out and say, "I'm going out with my friends to a movie tonight." And the response by the MG child is given through a filter of depression, fear, and panic. "You don't care about me. What will I do if you leave? What if I need anything?" Another response the MG patient could take instead is, "You're going out? Why?" Allow the caregiver a chance to explain their need for a break. The patient might still ultimately respond negatively, but by reflecting back the MG patient's fears, they can be alleviated. The caregiver may say, "I hear what you're saying. I hear that you're afraid of being alone. How can we make you feel safe while I'm gone?" By using the reflecting back technique, reflecting the patient's fears, and using "we," the patient feels heard and not alone, and can usually help solve the problem by critically thinking of possible solutions together. Sometimes we hold back on saying what we are really feeling because we think we may be misunderstood, met with criticism or shame because of our feelings, or we may not communicate clearly because we don't want to hurt the other person's feelings. Another block to effectively supporting one another is by not communicating clearly or saying what we mean. Some of you may remember 32 years ago the Challenger explosion. It's probably, I remember it, but a lot of you were born after that. January 28, 1986, the NASA shuttle orbiter mission on its 10th flight broke apart 73 seconds into the flight, killing all 7 crew members. The spacecraft disintegrated over the Atlantic Ocean off the coast of Cape Canaveral. The problem was found with the O-ring seals. As a technical communicator, I was required to take continuing education courses. And one of the best courses I took was led by a forensic investigator, and it was her job to review all the technical communications surrounding an event, such as the Challenger disaster. And she had discovered that 12 months before that disaster, that there was critical information about the O-ring seals not staying whole during temperature changes. And the temperature changes when they got below 32 degrees, the O-rings fell apart. And that was buried in a message way down in some memo to someone, and it was never brought to the forefront, it was never recognized. And that was a real problem. It was a vital information that was buried. And we sometimes hide our critical information by burying it from others in our communication. We may argue over a phone bill where it may be really about the MG patient's persistent worry that they may not be able to be the financial support of the family anymore. Or a parent caring for an MG child might lash out and discipline the other children too harshly because they're really worried about the MG child and causing them too much stress. Sometimes we hold back in saying what we are feeling because we may be misunderstood, met with criticism, or shame because of our feelings. We may not communicate clearly because we don't want to hurt the other person's feelings. To break through and achieve True communication, however, we need to voice clearly our worries and fears, bring them up front and center, and bullet point them for all to see. One way by doing that is to use clear, concise I messages. For instance, take the example of an MG husband talking to his wife. You always treat me like a child instead of your husband. I can still do things. He could instead try saying, I feel like a child when too much is done for me. I need you to help me try and do what I can do on my strong days, even if I can't do it the way I used to do. By using I messages, it doesn't lay blame on the other person or make them feel defensive. We all need to feel that someone cares enough to listen, understand, and take action if needed. And on the flip side, we all need to become aware of the filters that we are using to view the world and practice clear eye communication, reflective listening skills. So I want you all to do a little exercise in practicing communication and supporting one another. You all have filters on your table, like these little glasses. There's a box of them. They're in a little bag. This is a no judgment zone. So the only person that you need to be honest with is yourself. So depending upon what stage you feel that you're in, what stage of grief you feel that you're in, take a filter when you answer a question. The communications committee is going to come around with the questions now. And so you could look at the filters. I'm going to go back up. And so you're going to choose a question. You're going to take turns reflectively listening to each other and using the I messages. And I will back up so that you can see what color pertains to what stage of grief, and you can choose the stage of grief you're in to answer the questions.